Officer Ryan Cole, fueled by racist arrogance, publicly slapped a black jogger. His moment of brutal dominance shattered when she calmly revealed her badge, Lieutenant Nia Caldwell, Internal Affairs Commander. The jogger was a deep cover investigator, and Cole's brazen act just exposed not only himself but a vast corrupt network within the police department and DA's office. The slap wasn't an end, it was the explosive beginning of a citywide reckoning. Lieutenant Nia Caldwell pushed through the sweltering morning air, her movements precise, rhythmic. Every stride down the cracked asphalt of the park path was a calculated part of her cover. Today, she was just another jogger, a black woman in athletic gear, indistinguishable from hundreds of others in this city, except she wasn't. She was internal affairs, deep undercover, 2 months into an investigation that had painted a clear, disturbing picture of misconduct within the precinct she now ran through. Specifically, Officer Ryan Cole, his name had surfaced repeatedly in complaints: excessive force, racial slurs, planted evidence. His pattern was almost textbook. Nia's current mission to bait him, to provoke a reaction that would confirm the intelligence. It was a dangerous gamble, but the department brass, under increasing public pressure, had finally greenlit the aggressive tactic. The park was sparsely populated, save for a few dog walkers and early risers. Nia kept her pace, her eyes scanning, not for scenic views, but for the telltale presence of patrol cars. Her route was deliberately chosen. Crossing through a sector known to be Cole's usual beat, the sun beat down, an oppressive weight. But Nia felt only the cold resolve of her purpose. She pictured the files back at headquarters, faces of victims, their stories echoing a common thread of injustice. Cole was a cancer, and she was here to cut it out. Then, a patrol cruiser, distinct in its dark blue livery, slowed alongside her. Nia didn't break stride. She pretended not to notice, her focus fixed on the path ahead. The car matched her speed, a deliberate intimidation. She felt the weight of the gaze, the instant, dismissive judgment. The window hummed down. "Hey, jogger." You lost a voice, sharp and laced with condescension. Cut through the morning calm. It was him, Ryan Cole. His face, visible now, held a sneer, a casual arrogance that ignited a cold fury within Nia. This was it. Nia kept running, her eyes ahead. "No, officer. Just exercising." Her voice was steady, even, betraying nothing of the internal tension. Cole laughed, a short, derisive bark. "Exercising what?" "Exactly, running from a warrant. You look like you're in a hurry to disappear." The racial undertone was thinly veiled, a common tactic in his playbook. Nia had reviewed the reports. He often used coded language, just enough to deny explicit racism while clearly conveying it. She slowed, finally turning to face him, her expression carefully neutral. "I'm not in a hurry, and I have no warrants." Cole's smirk widened. Oh, really funny. You fit the description of a suspect we're looking for. Theft, young black woman. Jogging, sound familiar? He was fabricating on the spot, a clear abuse of power. This was exactly what IA needed. Nia maintained eye contact, refusing to flinch. A small group of park-goers, drawn by the raised voices, had begun to slow their own movements, their attention drifting towards the scene. "There's no need for that, officer," Nia stated, her voice firm. "I'm just passing through. I have identification." She reached for her fanny pack. A deliberate movement. Hands where I can see them, Cole's voice cracked, suddenly loud, authoritative. He was escalating. His hand went to his sidearm, not drawing it, but resting on the grip. A clear threat. "Don't reach for anything. Now you're coming with me." On what grounds? Anaya's voice was sharper now. She needed to push him further, to ensure the public targeting was unmistakable. Resisting. For starters, and if you don't comply right now, it'll be assault on an officer. Cole's face was contorted in a mask of aggressive self-righteousness. He swung the car door open, stepping out with a menacing confidence, his hand still on his weapon. He took 2 steps towards her, closing the distance. You think you can just talk back to an officer? You think you're above the law? Before Naya could respond, Cole lunged. His open palm connected with her cheek, a sharp, stinging slap that echoed in the quiet park. The force of it snapped her head to the side, the sudden impact jarring her. A gasp rippled through the small gathering of onlookers. The insult, the public humiliation, was immediate and searing. He hadn't just attacked her, he had attacked the dignity of her identity. Her very presence. The pain was secondary to the rage that flared within her. This wasn't just a misstep for him. It was a brazen, undeniable act of brutality. Cole loomed over her, his chest heaving, his face flushed with adrenaline. That's what happens when you don't listen. Nia slowly turned her head, her eyes fixed on him. The initial shock faded, replaced by a steely, almost terrifying calm. Her hand moved, not to her fanny pack, but inside her sports bra, extracting a small, laminated card. The shift in her demeanor was imperceptible to Cole, who was still caught in his moment of dominance. But for Nia, the transformation was complete. The jogger was gone. The internal affairs commander had arrived. The laminated card, small and stark, was held aloft between Nia Caldwell's thumb and forefinger. It wasn't a driver's license. It wasn't a departmental ID. It was a gold-embossed badge, a symbol of authority that transcended the blue uniform standing over her. Ryan Cole, still caught in the afterglow of his petty triumph, saw it first as a blur. Then, his eyes focused, and the color drained from his face. The casual sneer froze, replaced by an expression of dawning horror. "Lieutenant Caldwell," Nia stated, her voice now stripped of any pretense, each syllable sharp and precise, cutting through the stunned silence. "Internal Affairs, and you, Officer Cole, are under arrest." The air thickened, crackling with an invisible energy. The few onlookers, who had been murmuring in indignation at Cole's public assault, gasped collectively. The shift in dynamic was immediate, visceral. Cole stumbled down a step, his eyes wide, fixed on the badge. His bravado evaporated, replaced by a raw, naked panic. He fumbled for his radio, but Nia was faster. "Put your hands on your head, officer, now." Her command was absolute, leaving no room for defiance. Her movements were fluid, professional. She reached into her fanny pack, not for ID this time, but for the compact restraints she always carried. This was standard procedure for IA, even on a deep undercover operation. The moment of physical assault had triggered the immediate termination of the cover. Cole, frozen in disbelief, finally reacted, but not to comply. He made a desperate lunge back towards his patrol car, his mind scrambling for an escape, for a weapon, for anything to regain control of a situation that had spiraled into a nightmare. He knew what internal affairs meant, especially from a lieutenant. It meant his career, his freedom, perhaps his entire life, was over. But Nia was already there, blocking his path. Her training kicked in, a lifetime of discipline taking over. She moved with an efficiency that belied her seemingly casual jogger attire. One swift motion, and Cole found his arm twisted behind his back, his body leveraged into a painful, inescapable lock. He grunted, a strangled sound of pain and humiliation. The onlookers, initially shocked, now watched with a mixture of awe and grim satisfaction. Justice, swift and undeniable, was being dispensed before their very eyes. "Don't resist, officer," Nia said, her voice devoid of emotion. Though her grip was iron, "it'll only make it worse." She cuffed him, the cold click of the steel snapping shut echoing in the morning quiet. Cole's face was a mask of utter defeat, a grotesque parody of the arrogance he had displayed moments before. He was no longer the intimidating officer. He was a common criminal, restrained, publicly exposed. You set me up," Cole stammered, his voice thick with a desperate accusation. "You set yourself up, officer," Nia corrected, pushing him forward towards his own patrol car. "Your record of misconduct set you up." Your racial profiling set you up. Your assault on a civilian set you up. I just documented it." She paused, then added, "And for the record, I'm not a civilian. I'm a superior officer conducting an investigation into systemic abuse. You failed that investigation spectacularly." She retrieved her phone, calling in the immediate arrest. The official tone of her voice broadcast across the park, signaling to anyone listening that this was not a rogue act, but a legitimate departmental action. "This is Lieutenant Caldwell, Internal Affairs. Officer Ryan Cole, badge number 473, is under arrest for assault, abuse of authority, and racial profiling. I require immediate backup and transport for prisoner processing. Location Elmwood Park, near the main entrance. And notify Captain Davies. He'll want to be here." The mention of Captain Davies, a known hardliner against internal corruption, sent another jolt of fear through Cole. Nia watched his face, unyielding. This wasn't just about him anymore. This was about the department, about the community, about the long overdue reckoning. The single, humiliating slap had just ripped open a festering wound, and Nia Caldwell was about to ensure it healed properly. The scene in the park had drawn more attention. People were pulling out their phones, recording, their faces a mixture of shock, anger, and a nascent hope. The narrative. Until moments ago, a story of police brutality had flipped. It was now a story of accountability, of internal justice, delivered with a precision and unexpectedness that was almost theatrical. Cole, slumped against his patrol car, his face pale, seemed to shrink under the weight of the public gaze, a stark contrast to the imposing figure he had been just minutes earlier. The sun continued to climb, illuminating the new reality with harsh, unforgiving clarity. The sirens wailed, a shrill, escalating cry that sliced through the park's fragile calm. Two patrol cruisers, followed by an unmarked sedan, screeched to a halt near Cole's vehicle. Officers spilled out, their faces a mixture of confusion and guarded professionalism. Nia, holding Cole firmly by the arm, met them with an unyielding gaze. She saw the flickers of recognition in some eyes. Mom, Internal Affairs, a department feared and resented by many on the force. Captain Davies, a man whose stern reputation preceded him, emerged from the unmarked car. His face was a mask of controlled fury, directed not at Nia but at the situation Cole had created. Davies was a rare breed, an old-school cop who believed in true accountability. He walked straight to Cole, whose cuffed hands were still behind his back. "Officer Cole," Davies' voice was low, dangerous. "Explain yourself." Cole, pale and trembling, stammered. She attacked me, Captain. She was resisting arrest." Nia stepped forward, cutting him off. "That's a lie, Captain." "I identified myself as Lieutenant Caldwell, Internal Affairs. He assaulted me after fabricating a charge of theft and resisting arrest. The entire incident was witnessed by multiple civilians, and I recorded audio from the moment he stopped to me." She held up her phone, but the recording device was small, barely visible, a standard IA tool. Davies' eyes narrowed, shifting from Cole to Nia's phone. The weight of the evidence, coupled with Nia's reputation, was undeniable. He signaled to the patrol officers, "Take him, process him, standard procedure, and bag that uniform as evidence. Every piece." The officers moved in, their expressions grim, as Cole was led away. He shot Nia a look of pure, unadulterated hatred. It was a promise of future retribution, a silent vow that this was far from over. Nia met his gaze, her resolve unyielding. Back at the precinct, the atmosphere was a palpable mix of tension and thinly veiled hostility. News of Cole's arrest by an IA lieutenant had spread like wildfire. Nia walked through the bullpen, the whispers following her like shadows. Some officers averted their gaze, others stared openly, their resentment a cold, tangible force. She was the outsider, the one who policed the police, and now she had taken down one of their own. however disgraced. Captain Davies called Naya into his office. "Caldwell, that was a bold move. Reckless, but effective. Cole is a cancer, but you've just put a target on your back. There are people here, and higher up, who won't take kindly to this." "I'm aware, Captain," Naya replied, her voice calm. "But the corruption runs deep. Cole is just a symptom." Davies leaned back, his gaze piercing. "Indeed, but symptoms can fight back. The union is already making noise. They're claiming you entrapped him, that you provoked the assault. They'll argue professional misconduct on your part." "I followed procedure," Nia stated, her jaw set. "And I have audio evidence. My testimony stands." "Testimony can be undermined. Evidence can be lost," Davies warned, his voice grim. "The chief wants this handled quietly. No more public spectacles. He's already fielding calls from the mayor's office. They're worried about the optics, about public trust." Naya knew what handled quietly meant: bury it, minimize the damage, protect the department's image, even if it meant sacrificing true justice. "Captain, this isn't just about optics. It's about accountability. Cole has a history. There are victims. This needs to go to trial, publicly, to restore faith." Davies sighed, rubbing his temples. "I agree with you, Caldwell, but I'm telling you what you're up against. Expect resistance. Expect attempts to discredit you. Your own team, they're good, but even they might face pressure." The pressure mounted swiftly. Within hours, Nia learned that the district attorney's office, usually quick to prosecute police misconduct, was dragging its feet on Cole's case. Assistant DA Marcus Thorne, a man with known political aspirations and ties to a powerful police union lobbyist, cited insufficient evidence and concerns about the integrity of the undercover operation. Insufficient evidence, Nia snapped at her junior detective. Miller, back in her office. "I have audio, witnesses, and his own documented history of complaints. What more do they want?" Miller, looking uneasy, shifted his weight. "Lieutenant, there's talk that Thorne is being pressured to dismiss it. Some say there is a file on Cole, a separate, more damaging one, that the brass wants to keep under wraps. Something about a payoff, or a connection to a larger criminal enterprise that would implicate others in the department." The revelation hit Nia like a physical blow. A deeper corruption, a conspiracy to protect not just one rogue cop, but a network of them. This wasn't just about Cole's racist slap. It was about systemic rot. The betrayal was palpable, not just from the DA's office, but from within her own institution, willing to sacrifice justice for internal cover-ups. The stakes had just skyrocketed. She was no longer just investigating a bad cop. She was fighting a deeply entrenched system. The fight had moved beyond the park, into the dark, labyrinthine corridors of power, pushing Nia to the very edge of her professional and moral endurance. The target on her back felt heavier than ever. The resistance from the district attorney's office solidified. Marcus Thorne, the assistant DA, became an impenetrable wall, citing procedural irregularities and a lack of unbiased corroborating evidence. Naya's audio recording, though damning, was deemed insufficient on its own without more comprehensive witness statements, which suddenly became harder to obtain. The parkgoers who had witnessed the slap were suddenly reluctant to come forward, intimidated by subtle and not so subtle visits from plainclothes officers who advised them on the complexities of police investigations. The department, through Thorne, was systematically dismantling her case. Nia found herself working late, poring over files, her frustration a bitter taste in her mouth. The sheer audacity of the cover-up was infuriating. She knew Cole wasn't just a rogue actor, he was a symptom of a deeper, systemic problem. Her junior detective, Miller, whose initial unease had grown into a palpable discomfort, eventually confessed more. "Lieutenant," Miller began, his voice low, almost a whisper, as he closed the door to Naya's office one evening. "There's a whisper going around about a black book. Not literally, but a ledger. It's supposed to detail payoffs, illegal arrests, even evidence tampering, and it's connected to Cole. Nia leaned forward, her heart quickening. A ledger where who has it? That's the thing. Miller hesitated. The rumor is it's in the possession of someone who was directly affected by Cole, a former snitch he burned, maybe, or a victim he wronged particularly badly, someone who wants revenge, but is too afraid to come forward officially. This was the crack in the wall. Nia knew that official channels were compromised. She needed an unconventional ally, someone operating outside the system, someone with a personal stake in Cole's downfall. She thought of the names in Cole's misconduct file, the victims whose complaints had been dismissed, buried, or simply ignored. One name surfaced repeatedly: Elias Vance, a former informant, arrested by Cole years ago on trumped-up charges after allegedly refusing to cooperate in a questionable sting. Vance had served time. His complaints against Cole had been particularly detailed, citing specific instances of planted evidence and racial slurs. Nia decided to go off-book. She couldn't risk department resources. She would meet Elias Vance alone. It was dangerous, but necessary. If this black book existed, it could be the key to exposing the entire network. She found Vance in a quiet, run-down neighborhood on the city's outskirts. He was older than she expected, his face etched with hardship, but his eyes held a keen, intelligent spark. He was cautious, wary of her badge, even her personal approach. He had been burned by the system before. "Mr. Vance?" Nia began. "I'm Lieutenant Caldwell, Internal Affairs. I'm investigating Officer Ryan Cole. I believe you have information that could be critical to this investigation." Vance scoffed, a dry, humorless sound. "Internal Affairs, you people are all the same. You sweep things under the rug." I told my story. Nobody listened. "I'm here because I am listening," Nia insisted, her voice calm but firm. "Officer Cole assaulted me, publicly, and now the department is trying to cover it up, just like they covered up what he did to you." She saw a flicker of surprise in his eyes. "I know about the Black Book, Mr. Vance, and I believe you know where it is, or how to get it." Vance studied her, his gaze assessing. He saw not just a cop, but a black woman, a fellow victim of Cole's brutality, now facing the same systemic resistance he had endured. A slow, calculating look entered his eyes. "They called me a liar, said I planted the evidence myself. Cole said I was just a disgruntled street rat." He spat the words. "He ruined my life. I lost everything." "I know," Nia said, her voice sympathetic but direct. "And I believe you, but believing isn't enough. We need proof, irrefutable proof that exposes not just Cole, but everyone protecting him." Vance remained silent for a long moment, then slowly, a faint smile, edged with malice, touched his lips. "Revenge. I like the sound of that. And you want to be the one to serve it." He paused, then reached into his jacket, pulling out a small, worn notepad. It wasn't a black book in the dramatic sense, but a meticulously kept personal ledger, filled with dates, names, amounts, and cryptic notes. "I kept track of everything. Lieutenant, every dirty deal, every payout, every name involved. Cole wasn't working alone. He was part of something bigger. They thought I was just some lowlife. They underestimated me, just like they underestimated you. Lieutenant," he handed the ledger to Nia. Her fingers brushed against the worn cover, feeling the weight of years of concealed corruption. This wasn't just a book, it was a bomb. Elias Vance, the underestimated informant, had just handed her the weapon she needed for the ultimate act of defiance. The fight had just become very personal for them both. The contents of Elias Vance's ledger were more damning than Nia could have imagined. It wasn't just a record of Cole's individual transgressions. It meticulously detailed a protection racket, kickbacks from drug dealers, falsified evidence, and even a network of officers involved in framing innocent citizens to meet arrest quotas. Names, dates, badge numbers. It was all there. A horrifying blueprint of systemic corruption that implicated not only Cole, but also senior officers, including a captain in a neighboring precinct and even tacit approval from certain figures in the DA's office, specifically Marcus Thorne. Nia knew she couldn't simply hand the ledger over through official channels. It would be buried, destroyed, or spun into a false narrative. She needed to expose it publicly, in a way that couldn't be silenced or ignored. She devised a plan, a high-stakes gamble that would either shatter the corrupt network or destroy her career. She needed a public forum, undeniable proof, and a live audience. Her opportunity came during a televised press conference announced by the chief of police. The conference was ostensibly to address recent public concerns regarding departmental integrity, a thinly veiled attempt to mitigate the fallout from Cole's arrest without actually addressing the underlying issues. Marcus Thorne was scheduled to speak. Along with the chief and other high-ranking officials, it was the perfect stage. Nia made sure her internal affairs team, loyal to her and to justice, was discreetly positioned. She also contacted a local investigative journalist, Tanya, who had previously shown interest in police accountability stories. Tanya, initially skeptical, was swayed by Nia's quiet conviction and the promise of irrefutable evidence. Nia provided her with a redacted summary of the ledger's contents, enough to pique her interest and prepare her for the bombshell. The press conference was held in the bustling auditorium of police headquarters, packed with reporters, local activists, and curious citizens. The chief delivered platitudes, followed by Thorne, who spoke with a smooth, practiced ease about transparency and the dedicated service of our brave officers, completely omitting any mention of Cole's ongoing case. He even went so far as to imply that certain individuals were attempting to slander the department for political gain, a direct jab at Nia. As Thorne concluded his remarks, Nia, dressed in her full lieutenant's uniform, a stark contrast to her jogger attire from days earlier, stepped forward. Her sudden appearance silenced the room. The chief looked startled, then furious. Thorne's smooth smile faltered. "Excuse me, Lieutenant Caldwell," the chief said, his voice strained. "This is not part of the agenda." Nia ignored him. She looked directly at the assembled press, her voice ringing clear and authoritative through the microphones. "I am Lieutenant Nia Caldwell, Internal Affairs, and I am here to address the actual state of integrity within this department." A ripple of murmurs went through the crowd. Cameras flashed, video recorders whirred. This was unexpected. "The chief and assistant DA Thorne have spoken of transparency," Nia continued, holding up a blown-up, redacted page from Elias Vance's ledger. "But true transparency requires facing uncomfortable truths. Officer Ryan Cole's assault on a civilian was not an isolated incident. It was a symptom of a deeply entrenched network of corruption." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. Thorne's face had gone ashen. The chief looked like he was about to explode. "For months," Nia projected, her voice gaining power, "Internal Affairs has been investigating a systematic pattern of abuse involving illegal arrests, evidence tampering, and payoffs. This ledger, compiled by a brave citizen whose life was destroyed by this corruption, details the names, dates, and amounts of illicit transactions. It implicates not only Officer Cole, but multiple officers, including Captain Thomas Vance of Precinct 7, and directly links to the office of Assistant DA Marcus Thorne, who has actively sought to bury this investigation." A collective gasp swept through the room. Reporters erupted, shouting questions. Flashbulbs strobed frantically. Nia held up the ledger, then pointed directly at Thorne. "Mr. Thorne, you have repeatedly obstructed justice in the case against Officer Cole. This ledger proves that your actions were not merely negligent, but complicit in a far larger criminal enterprise within this department. It shows payments made to individuals in your office, ensuring the dismissal of cases that would expose this racket." Thorne, pale and sweating, stammered, "This is outrageous slander. She's fabricating evidence." But Nia was relentless. I have provided this entire ledger with full, unredacted details to several independent news outlets. It is now public record, and I have also submitted a full copy to the FBI, bypassing internal channels because it is clear this department cannot police itself. The room plunged into chaos. Reporters swarmed, microphones thrust towards Thorne and the chief, who were reeling from the unexpected assault. Tanya, the journalist Nia had tipped off, was already on her phone, barking orders to her newsroom. Her camera crew focused intently on Nia. The entire explosive confrontation was being captured live, broadcast to a city hungry for answers, for justice. The power had shifted, dramatically and irrevocably, right there on the public stage. The cover-up had just been ripped wide open. The pandemonium at the press conference was absolute, as Naya's words echoed, accusing a high-ranking DA and a police captain of corruption. The room erupted. Reporters surged forward, their questions a volley of demands for answers. Marcus Thorne, initially stunned, attempted a desperate recovery, shouting denials that were drowned out by the cacophony. The chief of police, his face a mask of scarlet fury and bewildered panic, ordered Naya removed, but the sheer volume of media and the unfolding chaos rendered his commands futile. Nia stood firm, a beacon of defiant calm amidst the storm, her unyielding gaze fixed on the reeling officials. Within minutes, the news exploded across every major local outlet. The raw footage of Naya's unexpected revelation, the visual of the ledger, the stunned expressions of Thorne and the chief. It was all being broadcast live, picked up by national news channels, social media ignited. Hashtags like Justice for Vance, Expose the Blue, and #Naya Caldwell. Hero trended immediately. The public backlash was swift and overwhelming. Years of simmering distrust in the police boiled over into widespread outrage before the chief could even fully process the disaster. The first consequences began to unfold. Elias Vance's full, unredacted ledger, now circulated among multiple news agencies, became a focal point. Investigative journalists, armed with the new information, began cross-referencing names, dates, and incidents, uncovering corroborating evidence at an astonishing speed. The FBI, having received Naya's direct submission, wasted no time. With the public spotlight blindingly bright, they had no choice but to act decisively to avoid the appearance of complicity. Within the hour, FBI agents, bypassing local channels entirely, descended upon the police headquarters. Their targets were clear. First to go was Officer Ryan Cole. His already dire situation worsened dramatically. The charges against him were immediately upgraded from simple assault and abuse of authority to racketeering, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice. Based on the ledger's meticulous entries, he was transferred from the precinct holding cells to federal custody, his fate sealed by the very corruption he had revealed. Next, Captain Thomas Vance, no relation to Elias Vance, a fact Nia had carefully noted to prevent confusion from Precinct 7 named prominently in the ledger for accepting regular payoffs from drug operations, was publicly escorted from his office in handcuffs. The spectacle of a high-ranking officer being arrested on live television further fueled public anger and solidified Nia's credibility. His grim, defeated face was a stark contrast to the confident figure he had been moments before. The most dramatic shift came with Marcus Thorne. As FBI agents moved through the headquarters, a team arrived at the district attorney's office. News cameras, anticipating further developments, captured the scene. Thorne, still trying to craft a denial to a bewildered reporter, was confronted by federal agents. His blustering quickly turned to panicked silence as he was read his rights and led away in handcuffs. His once promising political career collapsing in a single, devastating moment. The image of the assistant DA, the supposed purveyor of justice, being led away as a criminal, was a powerful symbol of the systemic rot Naya had exposed. Back at the press conference, which had devolved into a media frenzy, the chief of police found himself cornered. The public outcry was immense. The mayor's office, desperate to salvage its image, issued a swift, condemning statement announcing an independent, external investigation into the entire police department and the district attorney's office. As an immediate measure, the chief was placed on indefinite administrative leave, effectively suspended. Pending the outcome of the federal investigation, his career, too, was over. Swept away in the tide of public fury, the power had shifted with brutal efficiency. The oppressors, once secure in their positions of authority, were now stripped of their power, exposed and facing the consequences of their corruption. Nia Caldwell, who had walked into that conference under a cloud of departmental hostility, now stood as a reluctant but undeniable symbol of integrity, her bold act triggering a seismic shift in the city's power structure. The stage was set for a complete overhaul, and Nia, against all odds, was at its epicenter. The initial arrests and suspensions were just the first tremors of the earthquake Nia Caldwell had unleashed. The city was in an uproar, but amidst the chaos, Nia saw an unprecedented opportunity. The public, once cynical and resigned, was now galvanized, demanding real change. She knew this fleeting momentum had to be seized, amplified, and directed towards a fundamental overhaul of the entire system. Her first move was strategic, with Captain Davies's quiet support and the temporary power vacuum at the top. Nia established a direct line of communication with the mayor's newly appointed interim task force, comprised of external legal experts and community leaders. She bypassed the remaining departmental bureaucracy, which was still reeling and largely hostile. Her message was clear. This was not just about punishing a few bad apples. It was about systemic rot that required deep, structural reform. The federal investigation, spurred by Nia's comprehensive evidence and the intense public pressure, quickly expanded. The FBI, working with Nia's internal affairs team, began to unravel connections that went far beyond local corruption. The ledger, combined with Vance's detailed testimony now given under federal protection, began to expose a vast web of illicit activities, organized crime ties, payoffs for turning a blind eye to drug trafficking, and even political donations channeled through shell companies linked to illegal operations. The Black Book wasn't just a local ledger, it was a small piece of a much larger criminal enterprise. Nia became the de facto leader of the internal cleanup. She led targeted raids on officers named in the ledger, many of whom, under federal interrogation, began to cooperate, revealing even more layers of deceit. The old guard, those who had enabled or participated in the corruption, found themselves exposed and isolated. The police union, which had initially tried to discredit Nia, now found its leadership in disarray, facing federal scrutiny and a furious public. Their attempts to defend Cole and Thorne collapsed under the weight of irrefutable evidence and overwhelming public opinion. Nia also focused on restoring public trust. She held regular, televised town hall meetings, a stark contrast to the closed-door press conferences of the past. She spoke directly to the community, acknowledging the department's failures, listening to their grievances, and outlining specific steps for reform. She championed initiatives like mandatory body cameras, independent oversight committees, and revised use of force policies. She made sure that Elias Vance, the unlikely hero who had preserved the critical evidence, was publicly recognized for his bravery, helping to bridge the gaping chasm of distrust between the police and the communities they served. However, the deeper Nia delved, the more entrenched the corruption appeared. The ledger indicated that some illicit funds had flowed not just to officers but also into political campaigns, reaching even higher up the chain of command, potentially into the state attorney general's office. This was the truly dangerous territory. Exposing this level of corruption would mean dismantling not just the police department, but powerful political figures who had operated with impunity for years. The resistance, though less overt, became more insidious. Nia received veiled threats, anonymous warnings to back off. Some officers loyal to the old regime began to actively undermine her efforts, spreading rumors and attempting to obstruct investigations through bureaucratic delays. She knew she was pushing against powerful, Invisible forces, forces that wouldn't hesitate to retaliate. The deeper she went, the higher the stakes climbed. But Nia, fueled by a fierce commitment to justice and the renewed hope of the community, refused to waver. She was turning the chaos into a cleansing fire, intent on burning away every layer of deceit. No matter how high it reached, the fight had moved beyond arrests. It was now a war for the soul of the city's institutions. The investigation, driven by Nia's relentless pursuit, had reached a critical juncture. The evidence, painstakingly gathered from Elias Vance's ledger and the subsequent cooperative testimonies, pointed higher than anyone anticipated. It implicated State Attorney General Arthur Sterling, a powerful figure known for his tough-on-crime stance and his seemingly unblemished public image. Sterling had allegedly received substantial, undeclared campaign contributions routed through the very shell companies that facilitated the police department's illicit operations. In return, he had ensured that crucial cases against corrupt officers and their criminal associates were quietly dismissed or received lenient sentences. Nia knew confronting Sterling directly was almost suicidal. He commanded immense political power and had the means to crush her. The FBI, while supportive of Nia's efforts, was cautious, wary of engaging in a political battle of this magnitude without absolutely undeniable proof. They feared Sterling would use his influence to bury the entire investigation, painting Nia as a rogue, politically motivated agent. However, Nia had a plan, leveraging the very public support she had cultivated. The interim task force, under her guidance, organized a special public hearing at City Hall, ostensibly to present preliminary findings on police reform. It was a bait designed to draw Sterling out into the open, to challenge his authority on a public stage where cameras would roll and the people would bear witness. Sterling, confident in his untouchable position and eager to project an image of cooperation, agreed to attend. He saw it as an opportunity to publicly endorse the reform efforts, thus distancing himself from the scandal. Without truly risking exposure, he arrived with a retinue of aides, his usual smug smile in place. The hearing began with Nia presenting the department's reform initiatives. She spoke of increased transparency, community engagement, and accountability. Then, the agenda subtly shifted. Nia began to detail the scope of the corruption, carefully laying out the pattern of dismissed cases and lenient sentences that had enabled the criminal enterprise. She presented data, charts, and anonymous testimonials that, while not directly naming Sterling, pointed overwhelmingly to political interference at the highest levels. Sterling, initially dismissive, grew visibly agitated as Nia's presentation continued. He saw the trap closing in. When she presented the anonymized financial flows from shell companies into political campaigns, his face tightened. "Lieutenant Caldwell," Sterling interrupted, his voice sharp, condescending. "While these reform efforts are commendable, I must caution against baseless accusations. You seem to be implying high-level political impropriety without concrete evidence." "On the contrary, Attorney General," Nia countered, her voice calm but firm. "The evidence is quite concrete, and it points directly to those who have actively obstructed justice for years. We have testimony from cooperating witnesses who detail direct instructions to suppress investigations, and financial records that show a clear pattern of quid pro quo." She then played a short audio clip. It was a muffled conversation, but clearly audible. A voice, unmistakably Marcus Thorne's, discussing payments approved by the boss to keep the heat off certain operations. And then a deeper, more authoritative voice responding, "Ensure it's untraceable. Deniability is paramount. Our future depends on it." The second voice, though subtly distorted, bore an uncanny resemblance to Sterling's. A collective gasp swept through the packed hall. Sterling's face drained of color. He stood up, his composure cracking. "This is a fabrication smear campaign. You are out of line, Lieutenant." But Nia was ready. "Is it, Attorney General, because this recording was recovered from a secure encrypted drive belonging to Marcus Thorne, obtained during a federal search warrant, and we have now identified the voice through forensic analyses as yours, Attorney General Sterling. The revelation was a hammer blow. The room erupted. Reporters, already on high alert, began shouting questions. The interim task force members looked at each other, stunned but resolute. Sterling, cornered, his public image shattered, made a desperate lunge for the microphone, intending to denounce Nia, but he was quickly restrained by his own aides, who now looked at him with horrified expressions. "This is a witch hunt," Sterling shrieked, his voice losing all pretense of authority. "This is justice, Attorney General," Nia stated, her voice resonating with power. She then looked directly at the cameras, her face resolute. "The time for secrets is over. The time for accountability is now. This city deserves a police force and a justice system that serves all its citizens, not just a select few. We will not stop until every layer of this corruption is exposed and eradicated." The image of Nia Caldwell, a black woman who had been publicly assaulted and underestimated, standing firm against a powerful white politician, became iconic. News channels immediately cut to analysts discussing the Nia Caldwell effect. She wasn't just a lieutenant anymore. She was a symbol of resistance, a champion of the oppressed, and the embodiment of a new era of transparency and justice. The city, and indeed the nation, watched as she transformed the chaos into a movement, ensuring that the slap she received in the park would echo not as a moment of humiliation, but as the catalyst for an irreversible revolution. Sterling was outmaneuvered, and the seeds of true systemic change were finally planted.